Well, folks, this is actually a really exciting episode. We got a couple of rumors for you, and some of this rumor actually came from our own podcast last night, where something was revealed by, we joke, he's not really an industry insider. He's actually an industry interviewer who has interviewed hundreds of game developers, both from Nintendo and obviously all across the industry. And he's actually working right now to interview some developers out in Japan. Kiwi Talks. Reese Riley, he was on our show last night and dropped a nice little nugget for us that, look, we have speculated about it. We've talked about it. We had a feeling coming out of PAX West based on our conversations with the developers that it was probably coming to Switch 2, but we do have a game, a rather big one, supposedly coming to Switch 2 in 2026. That literally comes from our podcast, so I'm really excited to go over that one. But more than that, maybe it's the year of the Switch 2 Lite. Have you been hoping for a cheaper Nintendo Switch 2, one with maybe non-detachable controllers that you don't care if it docks with your TV? Maybe you have children and you want a cheaper version, less than $450 at least, for them. Well, there's actually some evidence, potentially a leak from Nintendo's own website, suggesting a Switch 2 Lite could be coming out this year. We have a couple game updates as well, really mostly related to the Japanese sales charts, of course, and beyond that, there was a Resident Evil 13-minute long trailer today for a Resident Evil event for Resident Evil Requiem. We learned some new details from that. I'm going to play some of that trailer. We're not going to play all 13 minutes, but you kind of get the idea. We're going to be talking about some Resident Evil Requiem today, and that is day and date on Switch 2 coming up in February, so pretty excited. Before we dive in, though, I want to remind you we are giving away 3 copies of Final Fantasy VII Remake Integrate. We're also on our road to 200,000 subscribers. It feels crazy to say it out loud sometimes. That's our goal here in 2026, and it all starts by getting to 161,000. We're really close. I think we're less than 50 subscribers away from hitting that. And look, we like to celebrate every 1,000 subscribers because I never want to forget what it felt like to get that first 1,000. I don't care if we're a 1 million subscriber channel. I still want to celebrate that, even if we somehow get multiple thousands in a given day at some point in our life. I don't know. I'm going to have to find a way to consolidate that celebration to at least a daily one, but I don't want to forget, you know? We worked really, really hard to get to where we are as a channel, and I never want to get too big in the head to recognize how many people 1,000 people actually is. It's kind of crazy. Now, let's go ahead and dive in. And we're going to start first with the leak/rumor from our podcast. We'll go over and switch over. And honestly, guys, we're just going to play this and take a listen for you. This is season 3, episode 35 of the Nintendo by podcast last night.
They could simplify. It doesn't need 3 or 4 buttons for those.
Okay. Well, I look forward to playing it on Switch too.
Yeah, but it's a pretty game, and the boss fight was a lot of fun that we all got to play.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. And the other one I'm excited for is Halo remake.
Yeah,
that's probably. But I know there's other third parties that I can't really talk about.
I'm not going to let this go. Did you just confirm Crimson Desert for Switch 2?
Maybe.
He looked straight in the camera when he did it.
No, he really did. He was clip farming. Oh my goodness.
I'm just like, hold up. Wait a second. Technically, GameStop was the OG league for it.
Wow.
But I'm just saying. He said it. He's not going to say it again.
It's a Prime exclusive, chat. It's a Prime exclusive.
Listen, I love the idea of Crimson Desert coming to Switch 2 because of Nintendo podcast. Because when we were there, and right before we got interviewed, we asked, "Is it coming to Switch 2?" Like our audience is really interested in this, and the guy was like, "Really?" Like surprised, like, "Oh, really? Switch 2 players are going to be interested in this?" Yeah, so I love to think that like
when did you speak to them, by the way? How long ago was this? PAX West.
Like August, September.
Was it last
August 30th?
Like Labor Day weekend.
September 1st.
U.S. Labor Day weekend.
It was that Sunday, yeah.
Okay, so I'm trying to work out when you spoke to them as to when I heard about this, as to the timeline and everything. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Cool.
So So there you have it, folks. Crimson Desert, according to Kiwi Talks, is coming to Nintendo Switch 2 this year. Now, as Gamebird referenced, we actually demoed Crimson Desert for about an hour. Each of us got to play for an hour at a private session, a media-only session at, PAX West. And that's where we asked the question, hey, is this game coming to Switch 2? We were just really direct about it because we were saying, hey, obviously I was wearing a Switch 2 t-shirt that day. They interviewed us. And I'm just like, hey, man, I think the Switch 2 audience might actually dig this game. And sure enough, they basically, oh, really? Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. And the way they said it, the intonation of their voice was kind of like a nod, nod, wink, wink. We're not going to say it out loud. And then Kiwi Talks literally just said, oh, it kind of makes sense that that's when you were hearing about it based on when I was told about it. So, so there you go. We'll have to wait and see if that pans out. If it does, that'll be the second time that we've had a game for Switch 2 first leak on our podcast for the platform. Technically, GameStop had a listing for it at some point last year, but kind of interesting. Last year was Fallout 4. That's coming later this year to Switch 2. Again, came from Reese Riley on our show, and now he dropped Crimson Desert, which is kind of crazy. The Crimson Desert topic kind of came up randomly when we were talking about our gaming game plan because it's one of the games we're looking forward to this year and one of our most hyped games out of PAX West. And Reese Riley just couldn't help himself. He had to throw in there that he's looking forward to playing it on Switch 2. It's pretty interesting, guys. Obviously, a little inside baseball on how that all happened, but I think it's kind of cool. Now, I didn't tell you about this story in our beginning of the video because, hey, I don't want to tell you about everything before we get to it. There's actually going to be a 35th anniversary for Sonic celebration. So Sega announced some stuff today, and it says, one of the most iconic and beloved brands in the industry is thrilled to announce its 35th anniversary this year. Since its debut in 1991, Sonic has defined generations with his signature speed, attitude, and style, expanding far beyond his innovative video game origins and into new characters and worlds, blockbuster films, animated television, music, merchandise, and more. To commemorate the festivities, Sega released a new anniversary trailer, which you're already watching, to build hype and rewind through Sonic's best moments. And here's like a quote. We're incredibly proud to celebrate 35 years of our beloved Sonic franchise with our fans, said Marcella Churchill, Vice President of Sega and Atlas Brand Marketing at Sega of America. This milestone is not just a reflection of our past, but also a look forward to the future as we continue to innovate and grow. We want to bring our community together and create memorable experiences for our fans throughout 2026. Additional 35th anniversary inspired content, partnerships, collectibles, and fan experiences will be revealed throughout the year. Head to the official Sonic the Hedgehog 35th anniversary website for the latest news and updates. And we'll just take a small glance at that website here. You can see some pretty cool stuff going on here. Obviously, there's been no official game announcements at this point, but they're planning a celebration. I wouldn't be shocked if we see some game announcements later this year when things are more ready, but I'm really just happy to see all of that going on. Next up, we have a couple stories for Resident Evil Requiem. Again, they had a showcase for it today, about 13 minutes long. People seem to be buzzing and excited over that showcase. Part of the reason is because it reveals differences in the gameplay between Grace and Leon. These are the two main characters you could play as throughout the adventure. We're over here at GameSpot reading this, but I'm actually going to put up some of the gameplay footage from the 13 minutes, so I'm just going to kind of read here. Capcom's Resident Evil Requiem showcase didn't reveal much about the story, but it did go into detail on how the game will change depending on which character you're playing, and the title will introduce new difficulty settings to the franchise. The new heroine, Grace Ashcroft, will represent a more classic, horror-focused approach to gameplay, similar to Resident Evil 2 and 6, but when players control Leon S. Kennedy, the tone of the game will shift more to an action-oriented style like Resident Evil 4, so kind of a play the game your way. It doesn't sound like players will get to choose which character they'll control, since certain parts of the story are meant for one or the other. Although Grace is physically weaker than Leon, she will have some abilities to make up for that. She will be able to craft weapons using the blood of the infected, and when Grace needs to shoot her way out of trouble, she'll have a powerful gun called Requiem to fall back on. To keep players from relying only on Requiem, the ammo will be limited. Classic Resident Evil right there. Resident Evil Requiem is also introducing some new difficulty settings. The easiest mode is casual, which lets players concentrate on the story and gives them an aim assist. Standard difficulty is a little harder, while standard classic won't let players save their games without finding a limited number of ink ribbons to use. That's a throwback to the save system in the older games in the franchise. Another departure from the series norms are more human-like zombies. Some of these poor lost creatures find themselves still working their dead-end dead-end jobs even after their death, simply because their bodies remember how to do them. Players can sneak past some of these zombies or closely observe their actions for clues about how to proceed. At least one of the infected zombies seen in the showcase was human enough to converse with Grace. It's unclear if that's simply a random zombie or a more important character to the narrative. And again, it's coming out on February 27th. And we're not done because there's a little bit more information as well. This mostly coming from Nintendo Life and talking about, the zombies themselves and how they're actually more terrifying than ever. And really, this just has to do with it talked about in that article about these more human-like zombies where they're not as disfigured. And in fact, let's just take a look at a screenshot here. Got some screenshots of what some of these more human-like zombies look like. And it's quite interesting because, again, some of them can even converse with you. And I find it interesting. It adds an extra level of care and horror to obviously a horrific situation. Honestly, guys, Resident Evil Requiem has looked fantastic. I got to play some of it at PAX West. It was absolutely fantastic at PAX West. Granted, I think it was a PC version we were playing or maybe the PlayStation 5 version. Either way, really excited. It was demoed already at Gamescom last year for Switch 2. All those demos look pretty fantastic. The hair was like the one thing that looked a little off, but everything else looked great. So I'm really looking forward to playing this game day one on Switch 2 next month. Now, speaking of Switch 2, we got to dive into the Japanese sales charts for last week because it crossed 300,000 sales last week in Japan. So Japanese charts, Nintendo's dominance continues as Switch 2 flies past 4 million. And you can see Mario Kart World here at number 1, almost at 3 million. You can see Momotaro Detsu 2. This is obviously software we're looking at between Switch 2. It's all Switch and Switch 2 on this list. No shockers there. But then here's the big one. 313,000 units to cross the 4 million mark in Japan. Absolutely taking the crap over everything else. And then technically, if you add all of the Switch sales up together, you're actually right in line with the complete sales of PlayStation 5 with the original Switch, which is obviously starting to dwindle back in sales as Switch 2 is the dominant platform at present in Japan. So this is pretty wild to me. 313,000, almost 314,000. Look, Switch 2 continues to be massively popular in Japan. Obviously, we know they have a slightly cheaper price point compared to the US, but really only compared to the US because the yen has just not bounced back yet. Once the yen bounces back, the price point will actually be on par with the US, and it's the same price increase over Switch 1 OLED that we had here, but it is what it is. Nintendo's obviously trying to take their economy into account, and they have a whole lot of things going on. The economic conditions the world over, like Nintendo might even be selling Switch 2 for a loss here, despite in USD being more expensive than Japan. So there's just some wild things happening worldwide, but hey, it's continuing to sell very well in Japan. Next up, we have a new trailer for Dynasty Warriors Origins. Man, that's a mouthful for me for some reason. Comes out next week, so I just wanted to show a bit of the trailer off and talk about some stuff here from Nintendo Life. It says, we're 1 week away from the launch of Dynasty Warriors Origins on Switch 2, and Koei Tecmo has blessed us with an all-new gameplay trailer, giving a thorough rundown of how things will look on the hybrid console. The above, what you're seeing right now, the 3-minute overview, is only available in Japanese, so, there is that. But Koei Tecmo previously announced that Origins will run at a fixed 30 FPS on Switch 2 to prioritize stable experience with desired 1,000+ characters on screen, and the trailer showcases exactly that. That's not a knock on it, mind you. The battles look suitably epic with a whole host of different fighting styles to choose from and a decent amount of variety to the opponents, it seems. It also gives us a peek at each character's skill tree, unlockable moves, and weapon options, so expect a lot of series signature customizations to be on display right from the jump. And again, it comes to Switch 2 on January 22nd. It did come to other platforms last year. Really excited for this one. Again, Dynasty Warriors, the Warrior franchise, just continues to be a mainstay. And now we get to maybe the headliner. This is the thing that everyone's probably really interested in, especially if you don't own a Switch 2 yet, or you're looking for a second one or one for your kid or something. Everyone knows that Nintendo likes to do lighter versions of their systems, right? We have the Game Boy Pocket, we had the DS Lite, right? We had the Game Boy SP, we had obviously the 3DS Lite and the Switch Lite, and probably eventually a Switch 2 Lite. Nintendo does like to make smaller, sleeker, slightly different versions of their handheld systems, and chances are it won't come with a dock or any of that stuff because, again, this is one way they make the console cheaper and more affordable. Like, if you want to see this system at $300 or $350, that's what Nintendo's going to do. They're going to have to cut back on a few things, such as the detachable controllers. That said, we finally have some evidence that a Switch 2 Lite is actually coming, and it comes from Nintendo's own account portal, combined with some nifty research on the Wayback Machine. Want to make sure we give credit to the discovery of this stuff over to a user on Blue Sky named Sky whatever that's supposed to mean with the colon and the 3. I think it's supposed to be like a face or something. I don't know. I'm not hip like the youngins to understand that. But it says, I think I've discovered something interesting, but I have no idea what it implies. On Nintendo's account portal, there's an unusual model code under the name OSM. The Switch 2 model's code is BEE. We know that. That's been a fact for a while. The portal has images for each model, and requesting OSM returns an image of a Switch 2, and he shows proof of that, and other people have verified this. It does seem to be what pops up. And he thanks, obviously, this other user for helping him figure out where to plug the model code into. When you go down, you get something interesting here. I was checking this when the Switch 2 first launched, and I'm pretty sure OSM was not there. So I went on the Wayback Machine. It archived these URLs with a question T parameter, which seems to just be a JS build time, which, yes, that's how JavaScript works. Anyways, this reveals it was added between 17574039117 and 178006697, and those dates correlate to the 9th of September 2025 to September 16th 2025. So that 1 week period there, and that's really interesting because it means this was not part of the Switch 2 at launch. The stuff we're seeing here, none of this had anything to do with the launch model, the model we all know and love. Well, some of us love anyways. Yeah, this has nothing to do with that. This is something else entirely and does not correlate to any known models of Switch 2. And again, was added in September, which suggests that it's possible that manufacturing or something was happening with a new model of Switch 2 at that time. Now you could say, well, it's the ZA bundle. No, the ZA bundle is still BEE. There is no custom version of Switch anywhere. Well, maybe it's the controllers. Nope. From what we can tell with the new controller colors, they don't seem to be using OSM. So in the end, this does appear to be a potential brand new model of Switch 2. Obviously, the image it fires back right now is just a standard Switch 2 model. You can obviously see that image right here. It looks like a Switch 2. Doesn't exactly have all the buttons there, and maybe it's a little more curved, but you get the idea here. This is just a base little drawing of a Switch 2. So I think this is all fascinating. I do think that there is the possibility of a Switch 2 Lite launching this upcoming September, heading into the holiday season. Nintendo has a history of doing that roughly a year to a year and a half after a system launches, usually 2 years, depending on when the system launched. Well, the system launched in June of last year. So by the time we get to obviously this holiday season, it's going to be roughly a year and a half, a year and 3 months, if it ends up going in September. So yeah, I do think there's a high possibility of Nintendo dropping this. It would also obviously make Switch 2 much more affordable for some people, much more attainable. Now, it is true the Lite version of the consoles are typically not the best-selling versions. I think Game Boy SP would be like one of those exceptions. But the Lite version of Nintendo systems is usually not the best-selling, but it is an option, and options are always good in the consumer base. This also puts us on pace to go about 2 holidays from 2026. So think 2028, where possibly we see an OLED model, or I know what some people are going to hope for, a Pro model. And yes, that means it's going to be more expensive, but then you get the better screen, obviously, or maybe even more power depending on what happens. So no rumors are obviously persisting for a Pro model or an OLED model at this point, but we now have something fairly legit off of Nintendo's website suggesting there's some other model of Switch 2 coming. So we just kind of assume it's the Lite model because that's the way Nintendo has traditionally done it. That's usually the next model up. So let me know what you think about this down in the comments below. Do you think a DS Lite, or why am I saying a DS, a Switch 2 Lite is coming out this holiday season? I do think that there's a distinct possibility of this. We're obviously not going to find out until much later this year, like 6 to 9 months from now is when we'll finally find out if this is legit, at least for 2026. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. I am Nathaniel Robojans from Nintendo Prime, and as always, I'll catch you guys in the next video.